All right, welcome everybody to our Wednesday morning webinar. We're going to get started now. We've left a couple minutes for everybody to get joined. My name is Adam Markfeld, and we're going to be talking about hiring a PPC agency today. So the title of the webinar is PPC Agencies Exposed, a deep dive into hiring an agency for your law firm. When we talk with attorneys, we hear all sorts of conversations and questions about who's the right fit, what works, what type of agency they need, what type of services they need, and everything in between. So we wanted to talk about, kind of pull back the curtain on agencies and talk about how we work, how we compensate, and to talk about good ways that you can make a decision to hire the right company for you. So let's get started. Do not delay. It's a couple minutes after the hour, and we'll get this going. But first, I want to just touch on a quick story to sort of set the stage for why we're here today. This is a shower that I have in a house that I'm converting to a rental, and it needs some work, obviously. So we spent a considerable amount of time trying to find contractors. We were contacting everybody. A lot of people didn't get back to us. Some people said they would meet us at the house. They didn't show up. Finally, we found someone who we thought would be good. His name was Leroy. I doubt Leroy's on this call, so I'm comfortable using his real first name. Leroy and I sort of got off on the wrong foot. When we first met at the job, when it was to start, I had some other people kind of helping me find contractors. Leroy said, "I'm not licensed or insured," just right out the gate. And I thought, okay, well, here we are trying to get started. It took us a while to get here. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad contractor, but not exactly a great way to get started. So I decided to roll the dice and move forward with him anyway. After the first day or so, I went to check on the progress in the house, and I noticed quite a bit of dirt was tracked through the house, although the work he was doing on the shower seemed to be okay. We had good communication. I told him about the dirt. He said he'd put something down. Everything was going fine. So things improved over the next couple days, but towards the end, they started to go a little bit sideways. And what we started to realize was that the work was really subpar. Here's an example of the corner. You can see the lines are completely misaligned. There's some grout on the wall, which is fine, but the grout lines just don't line up. So not exactly a pleasant shower experience. He left the outside very dirty. There's just some pavers where he was working. And I don't know if you can see it in this picture, but the floor of the tile is actually wavy. It doesn't have a consistent pitch that allows the water to drain so that it doesn't pool and then cause leaks. So the reason I'm bringing this up is contractors and marketers have a very similar reputation in the market. Nobody really trusts us, and that's not a good thing. There are too many players and actors in the market that maybe don't have the experience, haven't generated the results, just don't really know exactly how to do their job well, don't know how to act in a positive professional way, and then the markets that they serve don't look upon them favorably. And if you feel this way, I just want you to know that you are certainly not alone. Only 4% of Americans think the marketing industry behaves with integrity, and nearly half of consumers surveyed say they don't trust any news source. Now, we're not a news source, but we are a marketing company, and only 4% of Americans think the industry behaves with integrity. That doesn't surprise me. It's sort of a bummer, but that's why we're here to talk about how you can be more informed and more educated when you're talking with marketing companies to find the right one for you. I'm going to share a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. This is a picture of my family and I. We just bought a house in this crazy housing market, doing a little cider toast. I have a lovely wife, Becky, 2 kids, Macy and Parker. I've owned agencies for 12 years now, over 12 years. And I recently became very obsessed with crypto, a little too obsessed with crypto, to be honest. I gave up coffee a few months ago. Don't ask. I mean, if you want to ask questions, we have questions at the end. It's been an interesting experience, but one of the best choices of my life. And I like to train in Muay Thai twice a week. So that's a little bit about me personally. As far as the business, we were established in 2009, started establishing my marketing agencies in 2009. We manage about 6 million annually, but it kind of gives and takes on that. It's probably a little bit higher than that at the moment. And we have 12 full-time in-house staff. So we are not a working out of your basement type of agency. This isn't our first round. This is what we do. We've been doing it for a long time, and we have a very strong, structured, supportive team around it. So today's conversation, we're going to talk about why lawyers hate PPC marketers, because when I talk to lawyers, maybe not all lawyers, but most lawyers do not have a favorable opinion of PPC marketers. We're going to talk about the different types of agencies that you can hire. We're also going to talk about compensation models. Agencies offer different compensation models, and if you've only worked with one or two, you might not be aware of some of the different options. So we're going to talk about what to look for when you're compensating your agency. And then we're going to talk about red flags that you should keep an eye out for when you're talking to and working with agencies. So whether you have one right now or you're vetting new agencies, these are a couple of red flags that, in my opinion, are warning signs that the experience probably will not go that well. But first, let's just get a little bit of a baseline on marketing goals. So I think it's a fairly simple assumption that most people that are running marketing have some fairly basic goals. One of those being quality leads. You want the lead to be of high quality, someone that's interested in your service in your area, maybe checks a couple other boxes. You want to be able to track your ROI. You want to be able to look at, all right, if I spent $5,000 and I generated $25,000, that's a 5-to-1 return on investment. That's good, that's bad. I don't know, it depends on your business. You want to have a positive ROI, not just being able to track it, but you want the ROI to be positive. That's important as well. You want a consistent flow of leads. So if it's too inconsistent, if they turn off, that's just, that can be a little bit tough. And so the consistent flow might just be from PPC, but it might be from other sources as well. And you want a partner to help you navigate through the different situations that arise. So whether it's Facebook and what they're dealing with some of their privacy policies, Google Ads makes changes, on a monthly basis. You want a partner to help you navigate through that and help pivot your business so that you're still performing. And that results in, what this gentleman is doing is sleeping soundly. When you have those 5 different criteria in your marketing and they're all working well, it generally creates a lot more calm and less stress in your life. And that's what this gentleman, is doing here, sleeping soundly at night because he has quality leads, trackable ROI, positive ROI, consistent lead flow, and he has a great partner that helps him. However, what we see on the internet and represented through marketing companies is marketer Matt. And marketer Matt is the quintessential marketer on Facebook ads. He talks about the incredible results he's seeing with all the other attorneys he's working with. He's a little bit vague about how the campaign works and maybe the results, but he talks about how great it is and how much money he's generating, for other companies. It's just sort of hard to trust because it seems a little over the top. I've seen a lot of guys like this posing in front of sports cars and jets, or really just flaunting the success of their business. And even if their businesses are successful, I think what this type of marketing does is it really kind of paints the industry and makes it hard to trust a marketer because it just seems like too much. It seems like too good to be true. And when something seems too good to be true, there's not trust established. It's very difficult to take that next step and actually work with someone. So marketer Matt makes attorneys angry. And attorneys get frustrated because it's impossible to analyze the ROI on the campaigns. So someone, you hire an agency, they're charging a percentage of ad spend. After you've spent $5,000 in the month, maybe they generated 20 leads, but then the next month, maybe they generated 10 leads. The next month, it's 30 leads. And the cost per lead just keeps fluctuating and bouncing around. And so in order to analyze ROI, you really have to associate revenue with very specific times of the campaign, of the marketing campaign. And it becomes very difficult. And if the metrics, if the leads are not really qualified and reported in a clear way, then it's hard to know if the campaign is improving or not improving. Another reason lawyers get angry is because many agencies do a percentage of ad spend approach. And when the agencies are doing percentage of ad spend, it means that if you spend more in advertising, then you're going to pay the agency more. And this can go to extremes. So if you're spending $4,000, you go to $5,000, fine, pay the agency a little bit more. Or maybe it's worth it. Maybe they're doing a few more things because you're adding a service. But I've seen companies spending $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 paying a 20% advertising fee to an agency, oftentimes resulting in $10,000, $12,000 in fees to that marketing company. And there's literally no possible way that $10,000 worth of human capital and resources are being put into a campaign. I mean, $10,000 is like an employee and a half just fully dedicated to that campaign 40 hours a week. That's definitely not happening. I can promise you that. And so just by the sheer nature of increasing the ad spend, then the agency is getting paid more, and there's a misalignment of incentives. I also hear that agencies tend to lawyers are concerned that agencies are just not working on the campaign. They set it and forget it. What are they doing? I increase my ad spend, they're getting paid more, but it seems like they're doing less. We're out of the honeymoon phase of the early relationship where the agency was really doing everything they could to make sure that we were happy. And the last thing is you just don't know if you're going to get results. It's sort of a gamble. You are hiring a company, they say they have experience in running ads or experience in your field, but you don't actually know if you're going to get results. And that uncertainty is really frustrating. Um, there are different types of law, like personal injury, where it's based on contingency, and you do the work, but you only get paid when you generate the results. And that is not the case for most of the marketing industry. Most of the marketing industry gets paid a percentage of ad spend or a flat fee, even if they're not getting results. And then the only person that loses in that situation is the attorney. So this begs the question of who should you hire? What type of agency should you hire? Or what type of resource? And so we're going to talk about 4 different resources that you can consider when you're looking for a marketing agency. All right, the first one that is most common is a full service agency. Now, the dirty secret behind full service agencies is that a full service agency generally becomes starts as a specialist company. They do one thing really well. Let's say they do PR really well, or they do website development really well, or they do something else really well. And they're serving a market, and then their clients say, hey, can you do email marketing? Can you do SEO? Can you do social media? Can you do PPC? And they want to grow the business, so they just keep saying yes. But the reality is, a full service agency is typically really good at 1 or 2 things. They are not really good at all things. Take, for example, a full service agency that has 20 employees and offers 10 different services. Well, if you have 20 employees, there's a good chance that maybe 5 of those are some sort of leadership or sales position. That would leave 15 employees to actually produce work. And if you have 10 different services, that means that you maybe have 1 employee, maybe 2 employees doing one service. So let's say you have 1 employee doing SEO, 1 employee doing email marketing, 1 employee doing website development. If that employee were to leave, it creates a gap in the agency, and that service is no longer being fulfilled in the agency until they hire someone new. And then you have the hiring time and you have the ramp up time. So, for example, if we're talking about pay-per-click advertising and you're working with or considering a full service agency, that agency has a number of people, but they may only have 1 person doing pay-per-click. That person cannot bounce ideas off other people. That person may leave, and if they leave, then then literally no one will really be updating your account for 2 to 5 months would be my guess, or someone with very little experience is updating the account. In situations like this, a lot of times agencies bring people from other departments into the role to learn it on the fly and just kind of keep the lights on. Now, those are the downsides of a full service agency. Full service agencies are not all bad. They can offer multiple services and have 1 point of contact. In many cases, they can be more affordable for a service like PPC or SEO on its own because they're making money in other parts of your business, whether it be building a website or PR or some other form of marketing. But the reality is that full service agency staff is spread very thin. Unless you're maybe at the size of 40 or 50 people, where they have 3 highly dedicated members of the team focusing just on PPC. One way that you can understand how your agency runs a certain department is just asking simply how many people are running paid ad campaigns at your agency. And if they say 1 or they say 2, then that's a little bit dicey if those people were to leave, or they're just not very good in the first place. Now, they may outsource the service, so you could ask them, are these people in-house, are they full-time employees, are they an outsourced white label partner? It's common that it's white labeled outside, and then they're just marking that service up. But full service agencies don't tend to do one service very well, or they do one service very well, but it's the one core service that they're good at, and then all the other services are typically a little bit average. That's the first option you have, and that's a very common one when you're looking for agencies. Next, we have a specialist agency. I'm sorry, I should have described the green circle. The green circle on this gentleman's head, he's probably the PPC guy, but he's one of maybe 15 people. With a specialist agency, You have an agency that specializes just in one service area. They have specialist agency. There are specialist agencies out there for just pay-per-click, just Facebook, just building websites, just SEO, just email marketing, just cold calling. Whatever the case may be, a specialist agency just focuses on one service and tries to do that one service really, really well. They don't offer other services. So at Prevail, we don't offer SEO, we don't offer website development, we don't do anything except for pay-per-click advertising. Prevail is a specialist agency, and this is all we focus on. They tend to be, excuse me, more experienced in the vertical that they're working in, the service that they're working in, but they don't work in other areas. So one of the downsides of working with a specialist agency is that you sometimes have to work with multiple providers. People have different philosophies on this. I'm a believer that managing multiple specialists will yield better results rather than managing one agency that's going to yield, in my opinion, a little bit more average results. There's a huge bonus here that if your agency specializes in your industry, this is what I call the crosshair effect. So if you think about verticals are legal, they're healthcare, they're different industries, and you kind of you think about those on a board on a wall, and they're all going vertical. And then you think about services, which I call horizontals. So then you have PPC, you have website development, SEO, email marketing. Once you get a service crossing a vertical and someone just specializing in that one area, that it forms a crosshair, like from a gun, right, from a scope, and it's just very highly targeted, very highly experienced in the service that they're offering and in the vertical that you're working within. So that is a specialist agency. Our next option is lead vendors. Lead vendors are sort of a kind of they're big companies, but they're a little bit of an ancillary thing outside of agencies. I put the question mark on the faces because it's sort of a bit of a black box. When you buy leads from a lead vendor, what you have is a guaranteed price per lead that you're paying. They might quote you, hey, it's $100 for bankruptcy lead, something like that. They're typically running Facebook or Google ad campaigns or some other marketing to a landing page that's not branded for you. The leads are often more affordable. The quality can be a little bit inconsistent. And sometimes they're exclusive, sometimes they're not exclusive. That's just part of the agreement. Lead vendors have a place, and I think that it's a very positive, performance-based sort of environment in the marketing space. Sometimes when the lead quality is really low, or if the conversion page is a little bit misleading about what the lead's going to get, then the quality can be poor and they don't work out as well. But the nice part about lead vendors is it's sort of a more transactional relationship, and you can buy leads, and if you find a good one that's delivering high quality leads at the right price, then you can keep feeding that and keep going. If you've ever tried working with lead vendors in the past and you did not have a good experience, what I would encourage you to do is maybe try looking at other lead vendors, because they don't all do the same things. They all generate leads in different ways. Or if they're saying that there's success with other clients that are similar to you, I might start looking at your sales process and how you're following up and how you're handling that. Because if you are maybe not following up with the leads in the correct way, then it might be very difficult for you to close those because the sales process is not supporting the marketing process well. Now, so next week, what we're going to be talking about is actually what you need in place before running paid ad campaigns. We're going to be doing another webinar. We're going to be talking a little bit about the sales component as it relates to marketing and how those two pieces interact along with fulfillment. So the third option you have is lead vendors, and these can run right alongside any of your marketing. I highly encourage you to try it if you have not. Start with small orders and just test it out, see what the quality looks like, and give it a little bit of time. The last option we're going to talk about is the freelancer option. So we have full service agency, we have specialist agency, we have lead vendors, and you also have freelancers where you just hire an individual to do the work. Freelancers tend to be more cost effective. They can generally be very highly skilled if they're very good at one type, kind of like a specialist agency. Sometimes they go a little bit more generalist where they do a lot of things. So it's really important to interview them well and ask to see the results of campaigns that they've run before. The only challenge that you run into, which I'm sure many of you are aware of, is they have a little bit of an inconsistent schedule with vacations, or sometimes they take jobs and then your provider is no longer doing freelance work. There's no backup if something happens. When you're working with an agency and there's 10, 12, 15, 20 people at the agency, if someone leaves the agency, typically there's not a lot of disruption. and there's a consistent path for your marketing. You know, a freelancer can sort of be the same as an employee. If you decide to bring in an employee in-house, you kind of have the same variables that come up. They may be really good at one thing, they may not be good at others. If they leave or you need to let them go, that can be a problem. So there's a little bit more high risk with freelancers than employees. You could, in some cases, there's high reward as well. You may get someone really good that is really positive in culture, and they will end up costing less than hiring an agency. But it really takes a lot of time and energy to find that person and make sure that you that they're integrating the company well and that they're ramped up in a reasonable period of time. So now we're going to talk just a little bit about agency compensation models. What I've come across and what I've learned is that agencies can charge for the services in different ways, and a lot of times our clients don't even know that different compensation models are possible. So I'm just going to cover the four that I think are the most common, and we can talk about some pros and cons of each. Then we're going to talk about which types of marketing resources use which types of compensation models. So the first compensation model for paid advertising is fixed fee retainers. There's a huge range. I've seen stuff all the way down to $250, $300, $400 per month. That's the amount of money you're paying the agency, all the way up to $5,000. It can be even more than that. This is just the amount of money that goes to the agency. This is not the amount of money that is spent on the advertising. Sometimes these two things will be rolled into one fee. So if someone is charging $500 a month for their fees, and you're wanting to spend $1,000 in ad spend, you might be paying them $1,500, but really they're on a fixed fee retainer model. This doesn't change each month. It's sort of a limited incentive for the agency. But one thing to know is that because agencies are hiring human capital, these are generally backing into an hourly rate of some sort, or it's highly automated. It's either an hourly rate or highly automated. When it's a lower price point, it's probably highly automated, which means it's not very customized. So if it's not customized, it means that if you run a bankruptcy firm, you are probably getting basically the same campaign that every other bankruptcy firm has with very little adjustment. As long as you're happy, they're probably keeping it that way. If an agency is hiring employees at a reasonable hourly rate, there's a good chance their hourly cost internally is somewhere between $50, $60, $70, depending on how the agency is structured. Then they have margins on top of that. The net cost might be $100 per hour. So at a $300 monthly retainer, that's 3 hours of work per month. That's really not a lot of work. So you're not going to get a lot of energy there. On the flip side, if you're spending $5,000, theoretically, you should be getting a significantly more attentive agency experience where they're doing strategy calls with you. They're generating reports. They're updating the campaigns regularly. They're expanding the campaigns. They're really going all in and deep. So you get what you pay for, as with any marketing agency, but kind of understanding, and I think it's a fair question to ask, like, how do you come to that hourly rate? How do you come to that fixed fee retainer when you're talking to an agency or a service provider is a very reasonable question, because understanding their economics helps you understand where your money's going, how it's being spent, and really how much your account's being optimized. The second very common compensation model in the legal industry is percentage of ad spend. And percentage of ad spend, in my opinion, is the worst compensation model of all of them. The incentive is severely misaligned. It makes very little sense as to why the fee should go up just when the advertising cost goes up. There is some light argument for that, which is, if you're going from 5,000 to 25,000, there will be more time spent optimizing that campaign. If you're expanding services, you're going from bankruptcy to criminal to PI, you are building new campaigns. If you're doing landing page optimization, yes. So there are times when you are spending more, but I have seen instances where, with a $100,000 monthly budget, they're paying 20% of the ad spend, and that's a $20,000 fee. And there's no possible way that the agency is, running that campaign where they have a 30% margin on it and their costs are $14,000. On a campaign like that, the agency has a 75% margin and their costs are probably $5,000. And so I think the incentives are really misaligned. So there's no correlation as to when, if a law firm says, I want to increase my ad spend, and the agency says, great. If the campaign isn't performing anymore because you've increased the bids in Google and the cost per lead shot way up, the agency is still incentivized on that model, and there's no correlation between what the law firm's trying to do and what the agency's trying to do, because the agency just gets incentivized with higher spend. So I think this just sort of carried over from old media days where, media companies would buy billboards and they buy TV spots, and there was a lot more work done within these percentages. But right now in Google ad campaigns, especially when you get above, 25, 30, $40,000 per month, it really becomes severely out of whack with what the law firm is trying to do and what the agency is making. At the lower price, at the lower ad spends, maybe less than $20,000 a month, I feel like this maybe makes a little bit more sense and the impact's not as large. When you get to large ad spends, it doesn't make sense to me. So percentage of ad spend is very common. Next, you have hourly billing. This is more of the freelancer rate. This is a little bit uncommon. You might find this on something like Upwork if you're looking for freelancers. That's a freelancer marketplace. It's upwork.com. You can find ranges anywhere from $15 to $125 an hour. It is difficult to find a good vendor that will charge hourly. It is difficult to vet these people, especially if you're not exactly sure what you're doing in the marketing space. But they are out there and they can do a good job. They have a little bit of a low incentive to grow the campaigns or make sure that campaign's performing just because the alignment is not quite there. However, if you can find a resource and if you're only going to spend maybe $2,000 a month, hourly billing might make the most sense. Finding a freelancer that'll do that. Maybe they charge 50 bucks an hour. They're doing 4 hours a month and you're doing Upwork, which tracks their time. That could work out for you, especially on lower ad spends. I think doing fixed fee retainers can be very, very tough on low ad spends, and then percentage of ad spend doesn't really incentivize the agency. They're not making enough money based on their overhead to effectively run a campaign that's maybe $2,000-$3,000 or less. The last model is the pay-per-lead model, and pay-per-lead model is most commonly used by lead vendors. The range in a price per lead is huge. I mean, I've seen $15 leads being quoted for, employment, immigration, things like that. And I just recently heard of someone charging $1,600 a lead for personal injury. The range can be very, very significant. However, from a firm's perspective, you have a guaranteed lead price. You know exactly what your cost per lead is going to be. It makes it very easy to determine your ROI. It makes it very easy to analyze your campaign. And when a lead comes off, it's very easy to associate value with that lead, which some people don't like because it exposes the fact that if they missed a call, then there's a lead cost associated with that. But it kind of brings the value of a lead becomes much more clear because now every lead is associated with a dollar amount. You do have a conversation around qualified versus non-qualified leads. If a bankruptcy lead comes in and they have less than $5,000 in debt, is that a qualified lead? Is that not a qualified lead? Do you pay for that lead or do you not pay for that lead? That's a conversation you're going to want to have with your lead vendor. The reality is, at the end of the day, on the lead vendor side, they are going to make a margin. And so if you say, I don't want to pay for non-qualified bankruptcy leads, your bankruptcy lead might just go from $75 to $100 because they're still going to make their margin. They're just basically saying, instead of delivering you 50 leads, we're going to deliver you 40 leads. And that's how we're going to make up the margin. So when it comes down to the math of pay-per-lead, it almost doesn't matter in some respects, except for your intake process. So if you're buying a lot of leads and you don't want to deal with the non-qualifieds, then you can go for just qualified leads. You're going to pay more most likely, but you're going to have a lower volume, which might be easier for your intake and for your call center and everything else. Prices vary based on the practice area and the location. So bankruptcy is different than employment, is different than personal injury, is different than criminal defense. Pay-per-lead, I love this model. This is purely performance-based. When the marketer performs, if they do better, if the marketer is sitting there and they find a golden nugget in a campaign and it reduces their costs by 10%, they're rewarded for that. And they can then take that and they can use that domain expertise and knowledge and apply it across different campaigns. And it's the same way on the legal side, where if you create a template for an employment agreement and you have that, and let's say you do a fixed fee for an agreement and it's a $2,000 employment agreement, but you already have a template and you only need to work on it for 2 or 3 hours, that is intellectual property that you've created and you own. And the consumer is still getting the value. They're still getting the value of that employment agreement. It's still at a fair price. But you, as the business, have optimized your margins. And let's say you then drop it into some sort of a system that can auto create it based on, I think they're doing this done a lot with estate planning. Then you can lower your price, or you can just have higher margins. And that's the same way that it works in pay-per-lead with marketing. If the marketer is really sitting there grinding away, trying to figure out angles to reduce the lead costs, they're incentivized for that. And in many cases, that oftentimes can bring down a lead cost, especially if it's a competitive market. But everybody wins. All the incentives are aligned here, which I really love. So pay-per-lead, I'm a big fan of. So these are the agency models, and then the compensation models that we've talked about. On the left side, we have full service agency, specialist agency, freelancer, and lead vendor. On the right side, we have fixed fee, percentage of ad spend, hourly billing, and pay-per-lead. So with those, kind of two lists in mind, what we're going to do now is we're going to go through each of the agencies on the left, and we're going to talk about which compensation model they typically use. And then we're going to talk about how Prevail does this. We do it a little bit different way. So a full service agency is typically doing either fixed fee or percentage of ad spend. It could be either one. You say, hey, I'm going to spend $5,000 on ads. They'll say, great, we're going to charge you $1,500 fixed fee. We're going to charge you 30% of ad spend. If it's fixed fee and you go to $8,000 in ads, they're probably getting paid $1,500 still, unless they have a tiered approach. If it's percentage of ad spend and you go to $8,000, now you're going to be paying $2,400 instead of $1,500. So percentage of ad spend, in my opinion, is the least desirable, but probably the most common. One of the reasons I think that lawyers are not a big fan of marketers, especially paid advertising. And I've had the question a lot: why do marketers do that? And I do not have a really good reason. So when that's the case, we've moved away from it. We did it a very long time ago when we first started, and I think it's not the right angle for the industry. A specialist agency typically does the same thing. So an agency that's just good at PPC, they'll probably do fixed fee or percentage of ad spend. Again, same sort of mindset. They either fix the fee or do percentage of ad spend. I'm not going to sit on that. Same thing as a full service agency. Freelancers will do those two as well. We have run across a number of freelancers on platforms like Upwork where they say, we just charge $700 per ad account per client, or something of that nature. So they like to do fixed fee as well. If they're charging $700 or $800 per month, they're probably spending 4 to 5 hours, and they have a pretty good hourly rate if they're doing that amount of work. They typically don't like to do hourly billing, although you can find it sometimes, and they'll also do a percentage of ad spend. Lead vendors are typically in the pay-per-lead space. That's kind of their model. They run the marketing. They run it to third-party landing pages, internal brands, things of that nature. You're generally doing pay-per-lead with them. I like that model because it's performance-based. The couple downsides you run into with the lead vendor is that leads are run to a third-party marketing platform, marketing page, which has a brand that's not yours. So when the lead converts on that brand, they don't know that when you call them, there's no correlation between the two. So the brand could be something very vague, like Accident Lawyers Network, and then you might have a very specific firm name. When you call, it doesn't make any sense because they've never heard of you. That's one of the downsides. The other downside is you don't own the ad accounts, and you don't necessarily know what the quality is. And it's sometimes really hard to know what the offer is, because the offer that lead vendors might use is get free advice from an attorney. And that's really rough if you're getting leads coming in, and yes, maybe you want to have a free consultation, but you're not necessarily wanting to give free advice to everybody that contacts you. The way that Prevail works is we're a specialist agency that just does pay-per-click advertising, paid, through Facebook and Google. We just work with attorneys, and we do a pay-per-lead model. So in our opinion, this is the structure that makes the most sense, especially on the agency side. I like to say that we're not a PPC company and we're not a lead vendor. We kind of sit right in between. But we're a specialist agency that is compensated per lead. So if we don't perform, we actually don't make a margin, and in some cases, we might eat the cost of generating the lead that's over the price that we agreed to. This is how specialty agencies typically operate, and this is how we operate. So one of the reasons that we created the model that way is because it's performance-based. We quote a price per lead based on our experience, and then we work to generate that lead of a certain quality and on certain channels. So our incentives are aligned with our clients. If our client is wanting to increase their ad spend significantly and increase their volume, then we have to scale that in a way that maintains the cost so that we have a margin. So just by the nature of our agreement, our incentives are aligned. So if you were to be paying $100 per lead and you're getting 50 leads a month, with a PPC agency that's just doing percentage of ad spend or a fixed fee retainer, if you say I want to go to 100 leads per month, your cost per lead might go from $100 to $200. It might double, let's say, or 175 or something like that. Well, that doesn't affect the agency at all because they're just getting a percentage of ad spend or fixed fee. When you're working with Prevail, if you say I want to go from 50 to 100, we say, okay, we're going to try and scale that as much as we can with our current price point. Maybe we can get you to 75, where we can still have a margin. But if our margins start to compress, we just need to talk and say, hey, if you want to generate more leads, then what's going to happen is we need to increase the price per lead because now we're getting to a bigger market and it's costing more. And so there's much more conversation around aligned benefits, and a campaign won't just go rogue where your leads are all of a sudden costing $500, because we clearly don't want to lose money, and we don't want that sort of that negative structure to affect us. Whereas another agency, it's kind of like no skin off their back. They're still getting paid. They're not losing money. We guarantee a price per lead before the agreement starts. We agree upon the quality. In bankruptcy, if it's under $5,000 in debt, that's not considered a bankruptcy lead for us. In other different practice areas, there are different qualifiers. Some have a lot of qualifiers, some don't very many, some don't have a lot of qualifiers. It just depends on the practice area. We also run ads under your firm's brand. So one of the conversations with lead vendors is that, like I was just saying, is that the lead is not actually run under your brand. It's not generated under your brand. So they're running ad campaigns under separate brands, and you don't get any brand recognition. It's kind of confusing when you reach out to them. So when in our structure, we run them under your brand and you're still paying per lead, which means they're 100% exclusive. And it's easier to calculate your ROI. When your lead cost is always just $100 per lead, then it's easy to calculate your ROI. If your lead cost varies between $50 a lead, $75 a lead, there's a 10% margin on top. It's like, it just kind of gets confusing. We feed all of our leads into a Google Sheet along with our lead management system. And you can jump in there, you can mark off who came in, who became a client, who you were able to contact, not able to contact. And it's just very easy to calculate your ROI. That's a positive for our clients. It's a positive for us, but can also be a negative for us because it really exposes the quality of a marketing campaign. I think the same results can be seen in other more standard arrangements like percentage of spend and fixed fee, but it's just not as clear. And so I think attorneys, don't have the time to kind of figure out the ROI and like work through all the details. And so the campaigns just continue going on, even though they're not performing that well. So if you have an agency or you're considering an agency, there are a couple of red flags that I think are really important to watch out for. The first one is insufficient reporting to help you calculate your ROI. If they're sending you screenshots or a screenshot of a data studio dashboard that just says you got this many clicks and this many impressions, and the conversion number like just doesn't seem quite right. Like you got 50 conversions, but you're like, I only saw 5 lead forms. The reporting is probably not accurate and you're not really able to calculate ROI. So what this generally results in is a campaign that's just sort of trickled along for a while until a law firm gets frustrated that they're not seeing the ROI, kind of hard to calculate, not really sure where it is, and then the plug is pulled. That's typically what we see when there's not good reporting coming across. If there's only 1 or 2 ad managers in the agency, that to me is a red flag, especially if there's one in particular. If there's only one person that's running ads at a full service agency or at a smaller agency, if that person leaves or they get fired or something happens to them or they go on vacation, I mean, literally, if anything happens to this person, all of the campaigns in the agency are not going to be getting attention. So that's a very, 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 very high risk situation. If you're hiring an agency that there's only one person running it. 2 is a little bit better, but 1 is definitely a problem. If you're not hearing from your account representative proactively, that's a problem as well. You should be having conversations about the quality of the leads, the campaigns. Are you able to get in touch with them on a regular basis? So if you're not hearing from them, you may be at a very low price point, or they're just not servicing the campaigns correctly. You want to be hearing from your account representative on a regular basis. If there's not an overall strategy to improve your lead flow, that's a red flag. They should be coming with ideas regularly, Even if you've had the campaign with them for many years, keep trying new things, always try new things, allocate 20% of your budget to testing, and keep trying to find those nuggets that are going to improve your campaign. You may have inexperienced account managers spending your money. You will know this by, you could just simply ask your agency, how long has my person been running ads? How long have they been with your agency? What did they do before the agency? And just ask really pointed questions. Agencies tend to get very vague on the experience of people in the agency if they don't have experience. If they have experience, they'll say, oh, this person's been with the agency 2 years. They ran ads at another agency for 3 years, and they're one of our top performers. That means that you have someone good. If you don't get a response like that, it means that someone inexperienced is running your ads, and literally someone else in the agency or another agency could be getting you far better results. You can also look on LinkedIn just to see how long they've been with the company and maybe where they were before. So a couple questions that you can ask if you are about to hire an agency, and I'll just go through these fairly quickly. Are you a full service agency or specialized? This one's really important. How many services do you offer, and how many people do you have in your agency? The correlation of those two things is really important. So if they're a full service agency with 7 people, they're not doing many things well. If they're a specialized agency with 7 people, that's a good 4 or 5 people that are probably running ads. They're probably pretty good. How many ad managers do you have? We just talked about this. If they have 1 ad manager, not a good situation. If they have multiple ad managers, very important. How many clients do you have? How many clients do you have in our vertical specifically? How many legal clients do you have? If you're working with a legal marketing agency, you can still ask the question. It's a little bit of a moot point. But saying, hey, how many clients do you have in my industry, in my vertical? Can you share some results? If an agency does not have results in your vertical, then that means that they don't have experience in your vertical, or they have poor results in your vertical. So there's nothing to lead you to believe that the agency is actually going to perform for your company. When I give advice to my friends or kind of anyone else I'm talking to about marketing, I say, if you're looking to hire someone for your particular business to run ads, make sure they have experience in that industry already and ask them to show you results, because those two things can generate a much higher level of confidence for you and your business. If they do not, then I would just go to the next one. There are tons of specialist agencies out there for all types of businesses, and it's really important that the marketing agency you hire has worked in your vertical. Are your ad managers in-house, freelance, or white label? So if your ad manager, you're just asking the company, hey, where do your people work? Are they hired by you? And in-house could mean they could be remote, but they could be a full-time employee. So asking, are they freelance or full-time? Just ask right out, ask directly. Or are you white labeling another company? There's an entire industry of PPC companies that white label for other agencies, which means that the PPC company actually runs the campaigns for another agency, but the clients of the agency don't know that another company is running it. That's called white labeling in our industry. It's very common, but it's just good to know. Asking them how often they optimize the account and how they optimize the accounts. Understanding if their optimization techniques are automated or if people are in there actually doing the analysis themselves. If you're paying $300 or $400 or $500 per month, there's probably a lot of automation going on and the performance will probably suffer. If you're paying more, then they should be optimizing the accounts on a very regular basis and in the accounts making changes. I like the question of, if the account underperforms, what happens? Like, if you guys aren't generating leads at the price point that I want, what happens with our agreement? I mean, I've heard of 12-month agreements in PPC, which is apparently not all that uncommon. We don't do that. But how can you sign a 12-month agreement if you don't even know if the account's going to underperform? So I would put a bit of an out clause in there that says, hey, if our cost per lead is above this amount, then we have the ability to exit the agreement, because it makes no sense to be working with someone who's underperforming for a long period of time. And in my opinion, you can see results very quickly within the 3 months. If we stop working together, can I keep my account? So if some agencies keep the accounts, other agencies don't. It depends on the arrangement. If it's a pay-per-lead sort of arrangement, then it's not that uncommon for the agency to own the account because they're doing all the optimization. If you are paying a percentage of ad spend or a fixed fee retainer, then you should be able to keep that account because you're really hiring them to work on your asset, work on your account. Whereas in the performance model, you're not really hiring them to work on your account. You're basically buying their performance. You're buying their leads, and it's a little bit different mindset. And so I believe if you're paying a fixed fee per month, that you should be able to own the account. And the last thing is, what is your fee structure, which we already covered. So I would ask these questions. If you want to email me and get these in a different format, I'm happy to send them over. But these will give you a real good baseline of how the agency operates and what sort of account performance you might be able to expect. So at this point, that's the end of the presentation. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to prepare your firm before running digital advertising, or what you need to do in order to get your firm ready for running pay-per-click ads or any other sort of ads. We're going to be talking about intake, the relationship between sales and marketing, and those types of topics. So it's really going to be more tactical about, when we're talking with firms and they're talking about working with us, we say, hey, do you have these things ready? Are you, do you have these things in place? And then if not, we recommend they do those before they start working with us. So on the question side, one question is, how long does it normally take to start seeing results? That's a good question. In my opinion, not my opinion, in my experience, if a company has experience in your vertical, then it should not take a long time to start seeing results. I mean, I've heard 3 months, which makes no sense to me, because if the company has run bankruptcy advertising before, they know what to do with bankruptcy advertising. They know what negatives to add. They know what keywords to buy. They know what the landing page should look like. So really, for me, it's more about a 30 or 45-day window. And the 30 or 45-day window is because some markets are just different than others. Some markets are very expensive. Some are less expensive. Some have higher volume. Some have lower volume. So when we're talking about the time it takes to see results, I think agencies say you need 6 months to see results because they want you in a 6-month agreement. When in reality, if they're running the campaigns well, they only need to run for 30 or 45 days before you start to see the results. All right, another question here is, what's considered a lead in the pay-per-lead model? A lead can be, a lead for us is typically, and lead vendors, is typically a phone call or form submission. And when it comes to phone calls, a phone call is someone that's calling in to ask about legal services. We're not really qualifying it too far beyond that, because then you're listening to dozens, hundreds of phone calls. So someone calling in, if they're calling in to get a job, or they're a repeat caller, then they're not considered a lead, and that's not a lead that we're compensated for. On the form submission side, the way that we build our campaigns is when someone's putting in their information in a landing page, their email and phone number are automatically validated in real time. And so when the form is submitted, it has to be validated through a third-party platform called Twilio before it even gets to our client. And so that's what's considered a lead. With practice areas like bankruptcy, sometimes it's, if the debt amount is under 5,000, that's not a lead. Other practice areas might have different qualifications. But again, those economics really all shake out to the same numbers, because the cost to generate the lead is often the same. And all right, our last question, how do you track phone calls if that's considered a lead? We use a third-party call tracking system that has a tracking number. When someone calls the number, it then runs through our lead management system. If it's under 30 seconds, typically that means that there was a hang up, or it was a misdial, or someone abandoned the call. That is not considered a lead. When it's over 30 seconds, it is considered a lead. And then it just automatically credits against a retainer that's paid up front. So we use a call tracking system to make sure that the leads are tracked, and then they're of a certain duration. They record the calls. So if one of our clients says, hey, this was someone calling for, I don't know, a service we don't offer, and they were confused about, I don't know, debt repair versus bankruptcy, then we can credit that lead back, and we can listen to the call and make sure that that lead is replaced with a real lead. All right, that concludes our webinar for today. I encourage you to check back next week. We'll be sending an email on our webinar, How to Prepare Your Firm Before Running Digital Advertising. If you want to get in touch, adam@growwithprevail.com. Here's our website, growwithprevail.com. And thank you for attending, and we will see you next time.